Hello, hello, and hi everyone. Thank you for joining for our BPIAChats today. I'm your host, Alexandra Maloney, and I hope that everyone is staying safe and lifted during this time. So the purpose of this series is to share the experiences and the insights of members of the international affairs community and hopefully inspire the next generation to explore opportunities in the field. Also, the thoughts and views of our guest speakers are their own, and we are currently live streaming. And this talk will be posted on our IGTV and our YouTube channels afterwards. So if you haven't already, please follow Black Professionals in International Affairs on Instagram, as well as our guest speaker, whose handle can be found on their flyer on our page. And lastly, we encourage viewers to chime in below in the thread with any questions or comments that they may have. So without further ado, I will introduce our guest speaker for today. Gabrielle began her education at the U.S. Military Academy Preparatory School and then the U.S. Military Academy at West Point. After a couple of years, her aspirations shifted a bit, and she completed her degree at Kent State University in Ohio with a concentration in Justice Studies and TEFL, TEFL. She has experience with overseas teaching in Germany, with AmeriCorps, the Peace Corps, and IBM. She is currently working at Catholic Relief Services and Overseas Operations, and recently shifted to impact investing and private sector engagement. Gabrielle also has many entrepreneurial pursuits as well. She's also the WCAPS lead on the mentorship program. So thank you so much, Gabrielle, for joining us today.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
So I'd like to start out by asking, how is the current COVID-19 situation affecting the work that you do?
Great question. Well, COVID-19 is, causing mayhem across several industries. International development is no different. A lot of projects are not being funded because the funding that we would usually get from the U.S. government or other sources is being diverted for COVID-19 responses. So some projects are just being put on hold completely. And then a lot of projects, a few that I've seen, have been changed. So they're adding COVID-19 specific responses within projects. So a lot of people are scrambling to try to respond. And yeah, that's just how it is in international development. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. And it's our hope that, the COVID-19 situation will continue to clear up, and things, not to say that things will go back to usual or back to business as usual, but, I look forward to the summertime, okay? And opportunity to connect with people in person. So thank you for sharing that. So before the COVID-19 situation, what would a typical day look like for you? What are some of the things that you do and the responsibilities in your current position?
Sure. So a typical day would look like a lot of digging through documents. So one of the main things that people in the impact investing unit do is help to integrate blended finance solutions into project proposals. So a normal project usually will get funded by USAID, or maybe the European Union will fund it, or another entity like that. And what we're really trying to encourage is project teams to start thinking differently about blended finance solutions. Impact investing is where you insert money into companies or into organizations or larger funds with the purpose of generating measurable social impact and environmental change. But you have to pay that money back because it's a loan. So it gets businesses on the ground in those countries that you are trying to serve involved, which makes that solution in the long run more sustainable. So we're a part of the finance department. And so we integrate those types of solutions and that type of thinking into traditional projects. We also build the capacity of project teams in country programs. So there's a lot of travel involved. In February, I was able to go to Kenya and be a part of a project design workshop. So again, that's really getting those concepts into their heads and making them see the value of, engaging the private sector where you are, instead of just fully relying on, and also looking at financing vehicles, impact investing vehicles, rather than just relying on grants and that kind of older way of doing things. So it's very exciting. We get to do a lot of research. We get to, schmooze with all different types of private sector actors, and investment gurus. There's, groups that we're a part of, and we do a lot of exchanging between different professionals, sharing information, coming up with vehicles and solutions together. It really is an innovative space. And yeah, it's just a lot of collaborating and a lot of advising, and you get to create things. So it's good.
Great, thank you for that. And hello to everyone who's joining in. We're here with Gabriella, who works with the Catholic Relief Services in their impact investing and private sector engagement area. So feel free to drop any questions or comments that you have in the thread below. So Gabriella, could you tell us a little more about what got you to where you are now? So, the academic journey, the professional journey. I know you spent time teaching in Germany.
Sure. Well, my path has not been a straight one. It's kind of been all over the place. I actually started my, educational life in an art school, so I was an artist. I wanted to be an architect, and yeah, that was my sight line immediately after, in high school and after high school. And then I ended up getting accepted to West Point, and my mother said, you have to try it. You cannot skip this opportunity. So life took me there. It was an amazing opportunity, instilled me with a lot of discipline and a lot of the morals that I carry with me today. And then, I don't know, the travel bug hit me, and I wanted to do Peace Corps, and I ended up, changing my trajectory. And I think that's really what got me interested in some of the things I am today. I will say one thing that I've noticed is I've always kind of been oriented towards some sort of service, which is why I'm in international development today, and in impact investing, because I feel it is one of the most direct ways to really contribute to global development in a sustainable and kind of innovative way. So, yeah, I mean, that along with a lot of the people that I've met along the way. After Peace Corps, I went to Thunderbird School of Global Management, which was very life-changing experience for me. Most of the students there are international. Everybody is, entrepreneurial and focused on business solutions and social enterprise, and that really propelled me towards working for CRS specifically. They actually came to my school, which was surprising because usually it's like Johnson and Johnson and Procter and Gamble and those types of companies coming out. And CRS came, and I had a chat with them. I never expected I would be working here, by the way. But yeah, I mean, just all of those different experiences definitely added to me being where I am today.
Great, thank you for sharing that. So you mentioned sustainability and innovation. So in terms of impact investing, where do you see the current trends or like the current kind of priority areas or interest areas in the field? So like, is it in foreign direct investment, or think, look, I'm just naming things that I've heard.
Sure.
At this point. So if you
Sure.
could kind of, what are some of the overarching, trends and maybe issues or gap areas that you see in impact investing?
Sure. So impact investing is a very broad area, and it can apply to many different sectors of work. One of the main things that I see in my current role, definitely health. Health system strengthening is a really big area where impact investing can have a really big impact. Not to say the same word again, but also energy. Energy is big. Um, yeah, I'd say those are and climate change. Climate change is really big too. So, for example, impact investing in the health space is really good for hospitals and healthcare centers who are looking to take out money, take a loan, in order to expand their services, in order to improve the quality of their care, and then ultimately in order to build other, standing structures. So um, there is a bit that comes with that, though, because the business or the structure that you are inserting this money into has to have the capacity to pay it back. So that is the other side of the coin that or the other challenge that we face in development, is making sure that, yes, we find the money that they need, and we're able to find funders and investors that are willing to go on this venture with us. But we have to make sure that their technical skills are there. So we have a team member who does business development services, which is basically financial management training, making sure that they're keeping all their books in order and all their financials and everything, making sure that their employees are happy and that they can retain their employees. So HR, um, you name it. So anything that contributes to a business being successful, we have to make sure that that entity is equipped with those tools so that they can leverage that money in the best way and then be able to pay it back. Because the point is they have to be able to pay it back. That's what makes it sustainable. Because you want them to participate in their local markets rather than just receiving a lump of money that they never have to pay back.
Right.
So yeah, the trends right now, especially given COVID-19, health is probably the top one. Everybody's trying to make sure, even our own system in America and the United States is fragmented and not strong enough to deal with all of this. So we're just, yeah, everybody's racing now to kind of figure out how to strengthen systems. Oh, I will say another thing is a lot of people, generally, I'll say, are kind of freaking out about COVID-19 in the sense that a lot of developing nations, many of the businesses are small, medium, or micro-sized. So they really can't survive that long without regular traffic or regular customers, and these stay-at-home restrictions are really affecting that. So, I mean, even, I don't know if you knew, was it LL Bean? No, not LL Bean. One of those big clothing companies went bankrupt. So you can imagine J. Cole. No, sorry, that's a singer. All right. Anyway, I digress. Is it? No, not Kenneth Cole.
Okay.
Somebody in the comments if you know what I'm talking about. Anyway, yeah, so businesses are at risk of just not existing anymore. And oh, it is J. Crew. Thank you, Eliza. And we need to, and people are, in a panic about this, but it's an interesting time because a lot of impact investors are looking at this as a great opportunity to insert money and save these businesses and also to build their resilience so that the next time a pandemic like this comes around, they're fine. So you see a lot of unlikely partnerships and relationships being formed between the private sector, between these smaller enterprises that are trying to do good, between governments, between research institutions and academics. And they're coming up with some really cool stuff in order to, create PPE or keep these businesses afloat and serve the community even in this difficult time. So that's another big trend. This is an opportunity period for us, not necessarily a downturn.
Thank you for sharing that. Hi to those who have joined. We're here with Gabrielle, who is with the Catholic Relief Services in their impact investing and private sector engagement. So please feel free to drop any comments or questions in the thread below. We have one question from Ms. Harding Sydney 6. What happens if a hospital or healthcare institution defaults on a loan?
That's a good question. So it really depends on the financing institution that dispersed that loan. So there's going to be different terms and conditions depending on where you got the money from. Generally, due diligence is done so that probably won't happen. And if that does happen, then there are steps put into place where that hospital can get back on track in terms of paying back the loan. So there's a lot of safeguards that are put into place to prevent that from happening. And that's also a part of our job as the impact investing team, is to make sure that, we do our research. We make sure that that company is ready in terms of their capacity and what they're able to do in terms of taking out financing. So we try to prevent that.
Thank you. So what do you like most about your work, and what's most challenging about the work that you do?
Sure. What do I like the most? Well, this is kind of corny, but I love my team just because everybody is so focused and dedicated to the cause. And I think we all see impact investing and private sector engagement in international development as kind of the wave of the future of financing development. So that's very exciting just to be a part of and to be on the kind of the cutting edge of that. I'd say at Catholic Relief Services as well. There's some other great organizations doing it too. But CRS they're doing a great job. And I also really like that I get to be inserted into the finance world and the development world at the same time. Because even though this job is at the intersection of both, there's opportunities to kind of explore just investment management and learn about that. And then also to be really immersed in the technical side of development, whether it be an education project or a health project or whatever. So I get to kind of do both. So that's really fun too.
Thank you for that. We have a question that asks, any discussions around fast tracking restructuring of low-income countries' private sector debt with external creditors, specifically on a massive scale, given the broad scale impacts?
So are you talking about the loans that are taken out by like the International Monetary Fund and those types of entities? I don't know if we have that far of a reach. We're kind of working on the project level and not necessarily with like governments and such in order to scale down their debt. I wonder what the future holds for that. Perhaps there is a way for international development organizations, especially bigger ones with more influence in certain countries, to have maybe an impact or an influence on that, depending on their governmental relations. But as it stands right now, we aren't necessarily in that space. We work more with like very small businesses that we want to help thrive and kind of create an impact in their smaller communities.
Awesome. Thank you. What would you say is the best professional decision that you've made in your career path?
Ooh, that's a good one. My best professional decision, I'd probably say would be moving to the DMV. Um,
DC, thank you
international,
for staying here for those
yes,
on who may not know what DMV is.
yeah. So DC, Maryland, Virginia area. This is where international development lives, is in DC. Um, it also, well, New York as well, if you want to go to the UN or something like that. New York is great. Washington, D.C. is great. Otherwise, you're international. So I'd say, yeah, moving to this area, getting involved with different networking groups, and meeting other young professionals like myself was monumental in me being able to stay in this space and thrive in this space.
Do you have
Um,
networking groups that you would recommend for those interested in international development?
oh,
Um,
of course. Um,
who are
well,
our WCAPS folks?
WCAPS, of course, which is Women of Color Advancing Peace and Security. And they have working groups and subgroups in all different areas. So it's not just international development per se. You can do policy, um, weapons of mass destruction, all kinds of things that I don't really know that much about. But it's very interesting stuff and a great, great group. I tend to reach back into some of my own networks in terms of my education. So Thunderbird has 40,000 plus strong network across the world, and we stay in touch. We're really good at that. So that is one of my networks that I lean on a lot. Also, the Return Peace Corps Volunteers Network, lean on them a lot. And some of my best friends in the world are a part of all of those networks. Um, yeah, those are the main three that I.
Topics, because someone just asked a two-part question, but the second part is kind of being answered right now, which is how do you get your foot into the door if you don't have as much professional experience? And I would definitely echo Gabrielle's sentiments on, exploring different organizations, professional organizations. Particularly right now, there is so much opportunity because of the current situation to be involved in this like digital new way with these organizations for folks that may not be in the DC area, or maybe, in a place that they don't have, in-person organizations like this. And what I also encourage people to do is to explore, maybe starting a networking group or starting a, little organization around those topics in your area, because it's possible that you may not be the only one, right?
Absolutely.
But those are the few tips that I'll give for that. And then the first part of that question is directed to you, Gabrielle. How did you get into international development? So you shared that, you shared your journey a little at the beginning of the call, but maybe you could share a little bit more about what sparked your interest in international development and some kind of key points around that.
Sure. I would say I first got interested in international development when I saw international development. So, funny story, my younger sister told me about the Peace Corps. And we were supposed to go to, well, we did go together to the introductory meeting. And she was supposed to sign up as well. Not that we would have went to the same place at the same time. But yeah, she was supposed to sign up. I ended up signing up. And I was just ready to go somewhere new, get overseas, just live differently. And when I got there, I guess I knew what I was in for, kind of, because you get the whole packet and, all that kind of stuff. But I didn't really know what I was in for. And I learned a lot about international service and what other organizations were doing. I served in Ethiopia, which in sub-Saharan Africa, Ethiopia, well, this was a few years ago, may not be true today, but it had the largest concentration of international NGOs in country out of all of the other countries in sub-Saharan Africa. Ethiopia is a very strategic place, Horn of Africa, everybody was there. So I had a front row seat to all kinds of international development projects and initiatives and efforts. And that is what really, got me going and made me decide that I would probably pursue a career in development.
Great, thank you for that. And for those who are on, please feel free to drop questions or comments. And I have 2 more questions to ask. So if you do have a question, then please drop it in the comment box, and I'll do my best to make sure that it is heard. So my next question is, if you could speak to your younger self, is there anything that you know now that you wish you would have known when you first started this journey?
If I had to give my younger self some advice, I would say be patient. That's one of the things that I probably could do a little bit of working on. And I would really just be open to any and all possibilities. I'm very much so a planner. I write lists every day, all day, and I've planned my life out, until I'm like 80. And that's not necessarily the best way to do things. Just let everything flow kind of naturally and follow your path. So I think I've done a decent job at it. I have tried to mitigate some things here and there, but I think that's the best advice that I could give myself. Yeah, and just always stay very humble.
Great, thank you. And then my last question is, what advice do you have for someone who's considering impact investing in the specific field? Things they could be looking into, researching, resources, courses they could be taking.
Sure. Well, if you want to work in international development in general, here are some things that you should have in your toolbox. Know another language. Very helpful. Will help move you to the top of the list when people are like, who should I choose? They have the same exact credentials. Knowing a language is definitely a good thing. And a little bit of a pro tip for right now, Francophone countries are in high demand. Like, a lot of projects are being done in Francophone countries. So if you are fluent in French, wonderful. I know CRS tends to have a shortage of fluent French speakers, FYI. Number 2, make sure that you have some type of cultural sensitivity or cultural acumen. You know how to do business, across borders. You just know the right types of things to say. You're not, offensive or abrasive. I think that goes for any career, but it's very helpful in international development because you're always working with people from different places. You're always having to take their business practices and cultural norms into account. I'd say also, charisma never hurts. Be able to speak up and give your ideas. That's across any career too, but I think it's very important in international development to be heard and to be able to contribute. In terms of specific educational things, I've seen backgrounds of all sorts. And the cool thing about international development is there's so many different sector areas. So you could have a master's in education. You could have went to school and studied geology, or what's it called when you kind of preserve forests and stuff. They're looking for all these people. They're looking for folks who know a lot about water. You could even be a beekeeper. So just make sure whatever technical area you're trying to go into, that you have that educational background. For impact investing, I'd say a good financial background is good. And, skills in, writing and reviewing and advising. So a lot of the roles in international development are advisory, at least in the technical space. So you want to be able to convey a message